Calumet Editions, an eclectic publisher of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, introduced a new business model nearly a decade ago, in which the publisher and author work as equal partners in a joint venture. Their stable of authors have won numerous and prestigious prizes across literary forums. Where traditional publishers fail to see the value in projects, Calumet cooperates with its authors in realizing a book's potential.
Welcome to another session of Writer's Corner. Alan Miller with you, with two of Minnesota's very finest writers, and we have so many of them. But on my right, Alan Eskens, who is not only translated into 23 languages, but has won the Minnesota Book Award and just a feast of other awards in his 8 or 9 books. And to my left, a return visitor, Brian Lutterman, who has taken a step away from his Pen Wilkinson series to write a book we'll talk about called Incel, which is sort of a standalone, scary psychological thriller. Gentlemen, welcome to Writer's Corner.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Now, Brian, I don't know what to say. Incel is so different from everything that you have written in terms of the Pen Wilkinson series. It's certainly topical. It's certainly timely. It's a psychological thriller. How did you move from your series to this?
Well, I was ready to take a break from the series. Thought I'd want to try something different. I had some characters in mind for using, and then I read about incels. And for those of you not familiar with that, they're called incels are involuntary celibates. They're young men who don't do well with the ladies. They can't get a date. They can't. And they are celibate, but not by choice. And unfortunately, some of these incels are some pretty unsavory people. There have been many acts of violence. There's been a couple of mass shootings by incels. They do a lot of online harassment. They basically say that women don't have the right to say no. We are entitled. And that's a little scary. And like you say, Alan, it is topical right now. You've got people going around.
There's been a lot of publicity.
Yeah, you have people going around, men going around saying, your body, my choice, things like that. I mean, this is unfortunately becoming a lot more mainstream than it should be. And I found that disturbing. I thought it was something people ought to know about. I thought it would make a heck of a story, which I think it worked out well.
Alan, you've written a book about the librarian, but it's not really about the librarian, so tell us about it. Your new book is actually displayed right on the table here.
It's called The Quiet Librarian. The idea came to me when I was on my way to a library for an event, and I thought, well, I want to write a book about a middle-aged woman who kind of blends into the scenery and goes around unnoticed. But unbeknownst to everyone in her world, she has this incredible past that no one knows about, this secret. And so as I was driving, I started thinking, what could be that past? And I thought, well, the Bosnian War was about the right time. So she came of age in the war in Bosnia. And then I set to researching the war in Bosnia for this book, and the story took a dramatic and important turn. It became half historical fiction. I lived through that time, but I was here in America, and I saw it on the news. I had no idea the depth of what was happening over there, the complexity of how that war played out. And so I became enthralled with this character who came of age in the war, became a militia fighter, became something of a legend, but then had to flee to America and has been living here quietly, hiding for 30 years. And the book begins with her past catching up to her.
And now, Incel, I know, is one of the books that's been submitted for the Minnesota Book Award this year.
Well, we can all submit.
Well, I
Yeah,
suspect it'll be a nominee. Is this book also?
My book doesn't come out till February, so
Oh,
I don't have a
okay.
book in the race
Not this
year.
year,
So
next year.
good luck, Brian.
Thank you.
You know, at Minnesota Mystery Night the other night, somebody talked about research and what helps you in your research. My answer was, having been an attorney, I find that was a tremendous help to me. Now, you're both attorneys, retired or almost retired. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it puts you in a good frame of mind, good mentality for getting facts, getting them right, organizing, lining them up. I think that background is good for research.
When I first contemplated being a writer, I was an attorney, and I honestly didn't plan on writing mysteries or thrillers. I wanted to write more literary, people-driven novels, character-driven novels. But the more I put pen to paper, the more I kept going back to that world. So what I decided to do was I would write a story with kind of a dual plot line. One is the mystery or thriller part of it, which I use as a vehicle to tell the human story in it. So it is very helpful having been a criminal defense attorney for 25 years, because I know how investigations work. I know how courtrooms work. I know how evidence is gathered and processed. So I don't have to spend time researching that. I can spend my time researching, other aspects of the novel.
And I know Brian's character, Pen Wilkinson, is an attorney. She's a paraplegic attorney, but I'm sure your law career plays out in that also.
Oh, sure. They tell you, write what you know. Well, that's what I knew, and for better or worse. And so, the Pen Wilkinson series, they are not legal thrillers per se. Pen is mostly an investigator and not working as an attorney. There's a couple books where she does that, but I think that's gives me kind of a leg up in describing how an attorney thinks, how they even how they talk, how they relate to other people. I think it was very helpful to me.
And of course, I wrote a lot of briefs as an attorney. I did a lot of appellate work, and the writing and the research I just found invaluable in terms of, moving from that at a geriatric stage of life to writing novels.
I also think that reading transcripts is helpful, because a young writer tends to write on-the-nose dialogue, where when you read a lot of transcripts, you see that people don't talk that way. They don't talk on the nose. They don't talk in full sentences usually. They talk in clauses, and they will stop one thought and start another. Now, if you actually wrote the way a transcript reads, it would be confusing. So there's a happy medium, but there's a rhythm to how people speak that I think reading a transcript can help you understand that.
That's a really good point. I think, just realizing that dialogue does not have to be responsive. It can be elliptical. It can be diversionary. Just not this question-answer format. That's once you get past that really improves the richness of your dialogue.
That's also a good way to create tension in dialogue. If I ask you a question and you answer it, there's no tension. If I ask you a question and you dodge it, there's tension. If I ask you it and you don't respond, there's tension.
Right.
And so just not having the surface back and forth does create tension in dialogue.
You know who does that so effectively? Michael Connelly. I'm reading a Michael Connelly right now, and not answering the question directly is so effective in his writing, other than the fact that he's a terrific writer. But,
Yes, he is. And not an attorney, if I recall.
and not an attorney.
Although he was on the police beat for a number of
Yeah,
years,
he
I
was.
guess. So that's probably where he picked up his legal background.
And,
I was fortunate enough to interview him and Ian Rankin a couple months ago
really,
Wow.
on a podcast,
Wow.
yeah.
do you outline?
Absolutely. I'm a huge outliner. My first manuscript I worked on for 20 years, and it was just something that I sat down and started writing without an outline. And I was learning, so every time I'd learn something new, I'd go and readjust it, but at the end of 20 years, it was just a muddled mess. I outlined my second manuscript, and that became my debut novel, and I've outlined ever since, because it allows me to make my mistakes before I write 10,000, 20,000 words on page. I can see the story from beginning to end, how it's going to play out. Every chapter has a purpose. Then when I sit down, I can focus not on what happens next, because I know what happens next. I can focus on the best way to tell that next step.
So you know the ending when you sit down to write. Brian?
Yeah, I do as well. I just don't have the luxury of tossing away 10,000 words because I've written myself into a corner. You know, I've got to know where I'm going with it. And I know writing an outline doesn't fit with some people's idea of creativity. You know, they think it ought to just flow out of you, or, you know, from divine inspiration or whatever. But there's just a lot of nuts and bolts, workmanlike type thing, you know, moving things here and there, rewriting, replacing words, and so on. And people want to know your creative process. And you sure you want to know that? You sure you want to see how the sausage is made here? I mean, it doesn't, you know, flow directly out. It takes work, and you've got to think about it, and you've got to organize things, and it's a long process.
And I come to writing as a prolific daydreamer. That is really the key to why I'm a writer at all. And that's my favorite part, is just the thinking about it. And I use a big sketch pad. And I'll just sit there and daydream and write down, okay, what if I did this? And I run that scenario out in my daydreams, in my imagination. If it doesn't work, I turn the page, what if I did this? And that daydreaming process is really the most fun part of the writing process for me.
I find that's so true. A lot of time, Sharon will walk into the room and say, are you asleep? And I'm sitting there with my eyes closed, etc. And I said, no, I'm writing. And she said, you're not writing. But I am writing.
But you are. Yeah, I know. I've often have got my head in a story somewhere, and, well, very often. And so, you know, people who talk about mindfulness, I'm afraid that doesn't happen for me very much. I'm not in the here and now as much as I'm in a story somewhere.
You know how your story is going to end?
Yeah. Yeah. I've got to know where I'm going before I start getting there. And of course, some brilliant writers are, you know, seat of the pants. They just sit there with a empty screen, and, you know, if that works for them, that's great. I admire that. I wish I could do more like that, but I've got to have some structure to know where I'm going. Can I ask a question, Alan? You're describing the quiet librarian, an ordinary person who has got this, who looks into this big secret in the past, and it involves a war. And I'm just wondering, did you inspire yourself from your very first novel, which has kind of a similar take on it?
It was really more accidental and not connected to any of my other novels. That when I thought, okay, this middle-aged woman's going to have something happen in her past that is extraordinary. And then I just went online, what happened 30 years ago? And there was a revolution in, I think, Rhodesia or something like that, and there was the Balkan Wars. So I thought, well, the Balkan Wars is perfect. And then I started researching it. And that rabbit hole, I actually, early on, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to write this story just with my own researching abilities. So I sought out help. I reached out to the Bosniak community in the Twin Cities. We have a strong refugee community from Bosnia. And I also reached out to the University of Minnesota, and I got two people who both were coming of age, growing up during the Bosnian War. And they helped me understand the culture, what it was like during the war. My protagonist at one point is a teenage Muslim Bosnian girl, and to write from that perspective without the help of these, refugees, these sources, would have been, in my opinion, inauthentic. I wouldn't have enjoyed writing it because I want to be authentic. And so, hats off to these people who helped me write this story. When I was finished with the manuscript, I gave it to them, and if there's any mistakes, let me know. And
especially language with something
language,
like that.
yeah,
Yes.
a lot of that little stuff that they helped me with.
Well, this is something of a standalone for you as well, right? This is not, you didn't draw on your normal stable of characters that you use.
Right, so I've written about a community of characters since my debut novel. There's 4 characters in Life of Barry that I've written about their stories going forward. And this has none of them. It was just a story that came to me that it wouldn't have been right to set it in that community. And I went to my publisher. They were happy with the idea, so they told me write it, and I did. And I'm very pleased with how it turned out.
Well, I have found that one nice thing about writing a standalone for me was this one, unlike the 6 books from Pen Wilkinson series, is focused on a male character for the first time. And I've forgotten how much easier it is to write, for me anyway, to write a male character than it is female character. It just seems to flow so much naturally, and the dialogue, guy dialogue, just seems to become quite a bit easier. So for me, it was a nice break. I mean,
how did you choose to start with a female protagonist?
Well, that's one thing that did just kind of pop up to me, and out of the subconscious. And I wrote the first Pen Wilkinson novel in 1998, and then I put it in a drawer for 14 years. And when I was inspired by a male character. There's by a TV reporter who is a paraplegic. His name is John Hockenberry, and he's actually, I think, has some ties to Minnesota. He was on public radio, public TV. I read his book, and I was fascinated by his trying to function as a reporter, as a paraplegic. And I thought, I could do something with that. I think the limitations of a paraplegic character, really provides a great challenge. And also, I think it's interesting for people to look at the daily life of paraplegics, how they function, and how they. And I have also had to seek out people with direct experience.
I was going to say, you've also had a steep learning curve with that.
I did.
I've heard you speak about it.
Right, and so I did something similar. I reached out to people in the disability community here in Minnesota, and one of them showed me his special van that he uses, and so I created a similar one for Pen. And people have told me I mostly get it right. I've had a couple people say, you got to get her a new wheelchair. That clunky one that appears on the cover of your books, that's a hospital wheelchair. You've got to do better than that. So they keep me honest with it. But I think I couldn't have done that without talking to some people with that direct experience, because that really takes you out. And of course, writing female character, that definitely took me out of myself as well.
So I didn't write a female protagonist until my 6th novel, and I was very nervous.
That's the attorney.
Stolen Hours.
Right.
Lila Nash. And so I was very nervous writing a female character because I'm not a female. So I've got a wife, I've got a female agent, female editor. So they were all very helpful. But I read a lot of female authors writing female protagonists to try and surround myself with that feel, that milieu.
Right. And
it's so important to be accurate, because you're taken to task so quickly if you're not accurate that you really, really have to take great pains.
It affects the credibility of the whole book. Even if there's only one mistake in the whole thing, they read the whole rest of it with suspicion or disdain.
So what's next on the board for you?
I am now outlining my next novel. I kind of took a year off. I worked on some screenplays over the summer and into the fall. So I'm about 50% done with outlining the next novel. I hope to start writing it in January. And the Quiet Librarian comes out in February, so I'll be on book tour doing a lot of that, February, March, and April. I'm just having fun with it.
Good.
Yeah.
More fun than practicing law.
Yes. I mean, I enjoyed practicing law. I miss the people, but I'm an introverted or extrovert. I really like being alone in my basement with my thoughts. I can get up in front of a jury and do just fine, but I much prefer just the thought process, the daydreaming, and the sitting in my most comfortable chair for a living.
I was an only child, so being alone and moving all over the country as I did as a child, not having time to really make friends because we'd moved to another place, set me up well, not for my law practice, not for my trial work, but for being alone to write. And I could be down there for hours at a time. And, you know.
When COVID hit and everybody went into lockdown, what they were complaining about was really what my daily life was like.
Exactly.
You know, I didn't see people. I just sat in the basement and typed.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
And what's next for you?
Well, I have outlines completed for the next Pen Wilkinson novel. I've actually written about 20,000 words on it. And I have an outline for a sequel to Incel as well. People have said, we'd like to see these characters again. And
You didn't kill them all off.
No, only the bad guy. I don't. But right now, what I have going is a collaboration that I'm doing with my colleagues. A friend and I, Rob Jung, co-founded a group called Midwest Mystery Works, and that's 5 authors, and we do some joint things to promote our books, appearances, and newsletter references, and so on. And one thing that came out of that was Minnesota Mystery Night. That's one project that we have had, a very successful event that we do monthly here. And that was Rob's idea. My idea was a lot more work. I said, let's do a collaboration. Let's write a book with all 5 of our detectives interacting to solve a mystery. And everybody loved the idea. They jumped on it, and we are basically done with our first draft right now. And of course, having come up with this idea, it was incumbent upon me to make it work. And so I'm sitting there with all of these spreadsheets and timelines, and I should have gotten some project management software probably.
Coordination has to be really, really challenging.
But somehow it has happened, and we now have a story that is consistent. The timelines are consistent. It hangs together. It makes sense, and everybody has contributed great ideas to it, and so it's just been more fun than should be legal.
I got a question. How do you choose who the main character protagonist is? Is there one?
There is not one.
Okay.
If to the extent there is one, it's probably Pen Wilkinson. But she is maybe the first among equals. But everybody. Well, this is also we have another wild card to throw into. Rob Jung's character is a crook, and so that's
is that a spoiler?
No, okay. That's not. No, he's a crook from everybody will know that from the beginning, and so And so how he fits into this has been challenging too. He kind of comes in and out. He switches sides a couple of times. He's nobody's sure what he's up to, and then he gets double cry. You know, it's just been a whole lot of fun to put this together, and looking forward to finishing that up hopefully this year.
As we're winding down, and I see we have 3.5 minutes left, advice to young writers, or let's say new writers rather than young writers.
Yeah. There is a craft to writing that a lot of people think, well, I read books all the time, so I should know how to write a book. It's sort of like looking at a wall and saying, well, I've looked at drywall my whole life, I can go hang sheetrock, or wire an outlet because I have them in my house. There really is a craft to it, which I had no clue about the depth of the craft when I started writing. I took a lot of classes and read a lot of books to understand how to put emotion in, how to do what's called profluence, to create tension. There are techniques, and as a reader now, when I read a book, I never could get lost in a plot of a book very well, but I can get lost now in the craft, in how I see what this author's doing with this paragraph, with this chapter. That is something that, until you have that understood, you will always be struggling, I think. I think that's an important step that you can't skip. You can't just go out and write a book and well, most people. I'm sure there's some people who have natural talent that, God bless them, but most people have to develop that craft.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, what do you?
Well, I would say amen to all of that, but I would add the other big thing that I have learned is don't try to do it alone. Find a group, find a writing group, find a support group, find a organization, people who can critique your work, people who can give you advice and mentor you, people who can tell you about opportunities out there in the writing world. And and I did, mostly because of my personal circumstance, I did my first couple of books without that, and it was so much more difficult than when I found other people to connect with as part of the process.
And one way to create that group, what I used to do is I'd take classes at the loft, and as I'm doing my class, I would pay attention to the other kids, the other students, and I'd pick out the ones that I thought were really good writers. And then after the class was over with, I'd say, hey, can we do a group together, and a writer's group together? And that way, I'm always kind of punching up. I'm trying to get the best people to give me feedback. And I put together a couple really good writers groups over the years by doing that.
We have been talking with two of Minnesota's most accomplished writers, Brian Lutterman, Alan Eskens. I really want to thank you very much for taking the time to come down here and share with us on Writer's Corner.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Interviews will be available all over the southern portion of the state within about a week as we go live to tape. And I want to thank you for joining with us this afternoon.